I would like now to call Dr. Vasco Bettencourt, Director of the License Unit of Infarmed, to start off this Congress. Let us give them a big round of applause to Dr. Vasco Bettencourt.
Hello, good morning. First, I would like to thank to the organization for the invitation on behalf of Infarmed Management Board, in particular to Laura Ramos. As you know, Infarmed is the Portuguese Authority of Medicines and Health Products. That includes all activities related to cannabis, plants, for medicinal and scientific purposes. It's also the authority that approves medicinal cannabis products such as preparations and substances. In the process of licensing activities and approval of products, Infarmed verifies the compliance with good practices and several standards similar to the activities related to medicines. Currently, 20 entities are authorized for cultivation, 5 entities for manufacturing, and 2 entities for quality control of medical cannabis. And there are numerous others in advanced process of concluding the licensing of activities. The question that arises is, why Portugal? Why the growing interest and the boom of new companies in Portugal in this area? There are several factors that may explain. The sun, the high time of exposure, but there are several entities that will carry out indoor activities, so the sun don't explain everything. The low land costs could be also a factor. The low qualified labor costs could also be a factor. The low energy costs, and I have some doubts about this one. But in my opinion, the main factor is the Portuguese regulatory framework in this area. And why do I say this? Allow me to say and to give you my experience. The interest in activities relate to cannabis for medicinal purposes in Portugal began in 2016. When a company requested a meeting with Infarmed, in which it presented a project to create a facility for growing medicinal cannabis in a greenhouse with a considerable dimension, and intended to replicate in Portugal the existing activities in their country of origin. In fact, the company wanted to obtain the approval for a project, stating that this was the only way to obtain the investment to accomplish it, as investors wanted a guarantee that the project would be approved. Basically, what the company really wanted was for Infarmed to approve something that did not exist, nothing concrete. However, at that time, the process of licensing and approval of activities required that the facilities, infrastructure, and people actually exist. Something that existed was approved and not a project, an idea, a vision. The company ended up not submitting its application for approval of the project, which led us to think about what we can do to enable this type of companies to implement these projects that are not only of the interest of the development of new health areas, but also of economic interest. Thus, we redesigned the licensing procedure, since the legislation in force gave room to make these changes. I recall that the legislation, although dated from 1993 and 1994, already provided the possibility of authorizing cannabis cultivation activities for medicinal and scientific purposes. The rationale was of this redesigning of the process was the company give guarantees of its viability, suitability, commitment, and compliance with regulatory rules through the submission to Infarmed of a list of technical and legal documents in order to Infarmed approve the projects. We had the opportunity to put this new procedure in place with a second request months later, with a company that sought approval for a project for cultivation and manufacturing of medicinal cannabis, in which the project approval consisted of a so-called pre-license. With this pre-license, the investors provide the investment needed. The second company is now licensed and with full activity in Portugal. This new approach to the licensing of cannabis activity comprise a first phase of documentation, assessment, and pre-license, and a second phase of inspection of the facility and verification of compliance with GACPs and GMPs and security measures, and ends on a final license, final approval. With this new approach, there were several requests of this type of projects, many of which today already have their activities authorized. In 2018, with the new law approved by the Portuguese Parliament that established the requirements for the use of preparations and substance of medicinal cannabis, which was then regulated in 2019, there were already numerous requests for approval of ongoing projects. Within 4 years, a joint regulation was published, which came to consolidate and clearly foresee the redesigned licensed procedure. This happens after numerous meetings with authorities in the areas of health, agriculture, economy, justice, and internal affairs, but now with more synergies between these authorities, namely with regard to the implementation of security measures. There are currently approximately 200 companies that have submitted applications for activities related to cannabis for medicinal and scientific purposes, the vast majority of which are international companies. Infarmed, during this period, learned the specificities of this new sector, regard to the type of practices and companies, having several meetings with the companies, trying to assist them in every subject. Infarmed also, together with authorities, developed some guidance, namely, more recently, the technical note on treatment of cannabis waste, developed together with the Portuguese Environment Authority. Another path that we are still on is the approval of medicinal cannabis preparations. Today, there is only, as you know, only one approved preparation, some others under evaluation. This specific area has not yet received the expected interest from companies, which we understand because many of them are still at an early stage of production of unfinished products. So coming back, returning to the question, why Portugal, why the growing interest and the boom of new companies in Portugal in this area? Today, I think I can answer that. The reason for that, it's multifactorial, but without the regulatory framework and this suitability to the typology of companies and investors in the area of medicinal cannabis, Portugal probably would not have obtained the interest of companies from several continents, which make it to be one of the leading countries in Europe, if not the leading country in Europe, in terms of number of companies dedicated to the cultivation and manufacturing of medicinal cannabis. Once again, I would like to thank you for the opportunity to share, although briefly, Infarmed's experience in this area, and I wish you all a fruitful conference. Thank you.